Yo, what's going on, guys? Mush back at it with another video, and I am going to go over what I believe. I am sometimes a little bit hyperbolic, and I was about to say I think this is the most scathing burial I've ever seen on a video game just because of how well written it was, and it's coming from somebody that has actual credibility, and it is, of course, about Dragon Age Veilguard. I want to go over this statement, and then I also, not statement, like, bro, it's not that big of a deal, it's an X post. I want to go over Thomas Waller's X post. He is the CEO and creative director of Moon Studios, designer and director of Ori and the Blind Forest, Ori and the Will of the Wisps, and No Rest for the Wicked, which No Rest for the Wicked is in early access right now. I'll also give some of my thoughts on Dragon Age the Veilguard. Dragon Age the Veilguard is a game that EA sent me a copy of, so I am appreciative of that, but I ain't gonna, twist words or anything like that. I'm gonna be honest about what I think about the game, and I think the game is pretty bad. So, I'll get to that in a little bit. But Thomas Waller noted, I grew up in the 80s. Even as a young boy back then, I always thought TV shows were low-effort trash. Because every show back then was trying to be as politically correct as possible. Every show was about happy families, always trying to paint a perfect picture, always being careful not to talk about anything that could be the slightest controversial. Then The Simpsons and Fresh Prince of Bel-Air dropped, and that stuff suddenly felt radical, because every now and then the writers on these shows dare to approach subjects that were real, and whenever they tried that, it resulted in episodes that were memorable. I'd like to think it's because the writers managed to put some of their own experiences in there. Then in the late 90s, The Sopranos dropped, and suddenly it was clear that TV shows didn't have to be trash, that the episodic format could actually be used to give even more insight into characters, their trials and tribulations, etc. And it kept going from that point. We saw more and more TV shows that delivered excellent drama like The Wire, Breaking Bad, etc., etc. Looking at games now, it's clear to see that we're apparently moving back to the Stone Age of political correctness. I just watched a Dragon Age playthrough, and it's quite unfathomable how infantile and terrible the writing is. Everything feels sanitized and dehumanized. I don't know why we're suddenly thinking that this is okay. Your job as a writer is to write about things that are heartfelt, interesting, and true, to draw people into that world that you created, and if this is the best that you can come up with, you shouldn't be a writer in the first place. I hate to sound so harsh because I'm sure these people had the best intentions in mind, but this is what happens when art is created by amateurs. When we have to walk on eggshells and don't dare to approach difficult subjects, you end up with a bland and bad product instead of art. Always approach writing from a human angle first, draw from your own experiences, and dare to approach subjects that might seem risky, because often magic happens when we're okay with making ourselves vulnerable. So there are obviously elements of Dragon Age Veilguard that has pushed a lot of people away. However, I think certain scenes of the game that obviously you can view them however you want. If you want to say they're nonsensical, which I am kind of on that side, but those scenes are getting the most amount of traction on social media, and I think a lot of people have given their opinion on the game based on those scenes. Let me just say that I feel like those scenes are taking away from the fact that the writing in totality, from what I've played out of this game, is very, very underwhelming. It is not just those scenes, it is throughout the entire course of the character interactions where these characters feel like a facade. They feel fake, and I think the best word would be to be manufactured, and that's what a lot of Veilguard feels like to me, and that's what happens when you do lean into that direction a lot. A lot of that does come from a side. I feel, this is my opinion, that it's just being manufactured to cater towards an audience, and it's being manufactured to not upset anyone and just appease a certain audience, and I just don't think that's the way to go. Games need to feel like they are authentic, and being authentic requires it to have a level of a humane aspect to it, if that makes sense, and I just feel like Dragon Age the Veilguard is missing that entirely, and on top of that, it's just poor writing across the board. Now, I don't think Dragon Age the Veilguard is like an awful game in every extent. I think the combat has some fun with it, and some of the visual elements are nice, but that's really all I can say about the game. If I was to give, like, my early score on the game, it would be like a 5 out of 10. I wouldn't say it's like a 2 out of 10 or anything like that. Maybe 5's a little bit high, but depending on how you break down the score scaling, but I think the game is at best to me, it's very mediocre, and really playing more of it, I just think it's a very, very, like, poor RPG, and I get it that it's coming down to people talking about specific scenes and whatnot, and the obvious things being outlined on social media, but I just think there's so much more that this game also has problems in that unfortunately are not talked about as much. The game just has a real bad issue when it comes to writing, and if you're talking about a game like Dragon Age and BioWare titles, they are supposed to shine from a narrative standpoint, a world building standpoint, a story standpoint, a character development standpoint, and I feel like a lot of those areas, they do fumble the bag. Now, I haven't put 80 hours in the game or anything like that, and I've seen a lot of people say that this game is best described as a game that, you know, is an RPG that's not a BioWare title. It feels very disconnected from other BioWare games. And, you know, I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. I just think BioWare over the last few years has been absolutely washed. I feel like their last real good game was 2014 in Dragon Age Inquisition. I know that had a little bit of a mixed reception, but I thought Inquisition was a really solid game. But Mass Effect Andromeda was underwhelming, to say the least, and then Anthem was a train wreck, but Anthem was also a live service title, so I really don't give them too much pushback on Anthem, but still, they haven't put out a good game in a decade, and I feel like what you see out of Dragon Age the Veilguard is not only a really poor outing from a writing standpoint and adopting a lot of the elements of BioWare that make them washed, it also is pushing some narratives that I just don't think is ideal to push in terms of being the most successful as possible. Look, if we talk about games being as successful as possible, you can look at Dragon Age the Veilguard's data and the Steam concurrent player numbers, and that number is going to be scrutinized to the end of Earth, but there's a lot of context that is being forgotten. This game peaked at, like, what, 89,000 concurrent players, and a lot of people are like, oh my god, this is the most played EA single-player game of all time, it's a gigantic success, etc., etc. I wouldn't say that's a success, you guys. I would say that that number, that 90,000 number, is at best fairly underwhelming, and if you really look at the context, I would say saying it's a pretty bad number might be a little bit of a stretch, but it's not a great number. I think it's fairly underwhelming because this is a game that's $60. This is a game that did not require EA account linking, and we've talked about it over and over again. Account linking does detract from your potential audience base. That is proven, absolutely. And it's a $60 game versus a $70 game. Good PC version, no online DRM, no account linking, and it's $60 versus $70. The comparison that people are drawing to is Star Wars Jedi Survivor, and Jedi Survivor was legitimately the worst PC port of all time. It had EA account linking, and it was a $70 game. This is the context a lot of people don't offer you when they do comparisons like that. Now, if you want to compare it to the Dead Space remake, which was generally considered to be a commercial failure, and that it outpaced Dead Space remake, sure, I'll give you that. But Dragon Age is an IP that is established, and I feel like, you know, you look at numbers for a game like Dragon's Dogma 2, and I feel like Dragon's Dogma 2 is one of the more fair comparisons you can make, in the sense that it's not perfect. That game was also a mediocre PC version, and that game was $70 versus $60. However, that game was at least an action RPG released in the same year, and was a follow-up title to a franchise that some people view as relatively niche. I mean, Dragon's Dogma didn't get a sequel, but you get the idea. I feel like that's one of the better comparisons you can make. Space Marine 2 is a decent comparison, being that it's a sequel to an existing franchise, and that game did really, really well, way better than Dragon Age the Veilguard, and I feel like Dragon Age as an IP has way more cachet. So not to get into the numbers talk again, but yeah, I just wanted to go over mainly Thomas Mahler's statement, or post on Twitter. Statement is such a you know, fancy term, but what a scathing remark, and I just think a lot of that rings true in gaming today. And again, I don't want to crap completely on the developers. I think they had, as Thomas Mahler said, the best intentions in mind, but a lot of Dragon Age just seems so mediocre and just not something I could get invested into. And you could say that I was going into it looking to not get invested into the game. I was really trying to give the game a fair chance, but it is what it is. Let me know what you guys think in the comments section down below. If you actually play Dragon Age, I'm curious to hear your guys' opinion. But yeah, that'll do it for me. Let me know all of your thoughts in the comments section down below. Thanks for watching, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace out. Hey, what's going on, guys? Mush here again. Hope you enjoyed the video. As you guys might know, YouTube's notification system is sometimes a little bit wonky, even if you're subscribed to the channel. Maybe you're not abundantly aware that I uploaded a video. To remedy that situation, make sure you hit the bell notification button. This way, whenever I upload a new video, and I try to upload as consistently as possible, you will be notified directly of the upload, and you can watch it as soon as it goes live. I would really appreciate if you guys hit that button so you can stay up to date with all of the content I'm posting. But as always, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace out.